Zettlemoyer from RKL. We're here to present the 2016 audit. This is Allison Dowdry, also from RKL. Allison was out here and managed the field work as we went through the audit process. I believe you have in front of you sorry, the financial and compliance report. If we can turn to page 2, we'll start there with the independent auditor's report. You'll see a couple bolded areas within the report. First part tells you what we're auditing, what period we're auditing. The second bullet point, management's responsibility, is important to this board and the controller's office and management of the county, and that's really describing your responsibilities. And the county has the overall responsibility for the financial statements. Our responsibility as auditors is to express an opinion on the financial statements based on our review of data and testing transactions. And our opinion is on the top of page 3. It's a clean opinion or an unmodified opinion, and we believe that the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Allison's going to go through the numeric part of the financial statement. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask as we go through.
Okay. If you'll go to page 14, we have the statement of net position. This shows the assets and deferred outflows of resources. Cash and cash equivalents for governmental activities, which is what I'm going to focus on, were $29.8 million. Accounts receivable were $7.5 million. Capital assets being depreciated were $18.1 million. On page 15, it shows you the liabilities and net position. Accounts payable were approximately $6.8 million. Unearned revenue was $4.9 million. The current portion of long-term debt, so the principal payments that are due in 2017, are $2.1 million. The net pension liability was $18.4 million. And then the business type net pension liability was $1.1 million for a total of $19.6 million. The non-current portion of long-term debt was $15.2 million. And the total net position is $14.2 million. You go to page 16. This shows the statement of activities. Total governmental activity expenses totaled $99.6 million. Charges for services were $51.4 million, and operating grants and contributions were $22.4 million. This led a deficit of $25.9 million, which was funded with general revenues of $31.7 million, which is mostly made up of real estate taxes. The change in that position was $5.8 million. If you turn to page 17, this is the balance sheet for the governmental funds. I'm going to cover the general fund because that's the operating account of the county. Cash and cash equivalents were $19.2 million. Accounts payable and accruals were $5.1 million. And the total fund balance was $21.7 million. If you turn to page 19, this is a statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Once again, looking at the general fund. Total revenues were $43 million. Total expenditures were $32.6 million. The excess of revenues over expenditures were $10.4 million. And then there's transfers out of $8.4 million. So those were transfers out of the general fund to fund the other funds. And the net change in fund balance was $2.8 million. You turn to page, I think it's 28. This begins the footnotes to the financial statements. Note 1 and Note 2 just tells you a little bit about the county and the accounting methods. There were no significant changes for 2016. If you turn to page 36, Mark is going to highlight one footnote.
You'll see at the bottom of page 36 a restatement of the governmental-wide financial statements. And that relates to a change in the methodology that the actuaries utilize to calculate your pension liability. So at the end of 2015, they did a calculation, calculated what that liability was. At the end of 16, they went back and re-looked at their calculation and the methodology. And basically what this footnote is showing for your governmental activities, your pension liability as of 12/31/15, they recalculated and reduced it by about $3.6 million. So there's a prior period adjustment based on an actuarial recalculation of their report, and it was a benefit to the county. So it improved your overall financial position.
Mark, that happened in other counties as well, correct?
It did.
What was the typical outcome? Was this the typical outcome in other counties, or did some gain and some loss?
No, the typical outcome was that there was a reduction of the pension liability, so you basically had a gain and improvement in the position. And it had to do with how they treated the employee contributions into the plan and the assumptions related to the interest that was earned or credited to their accounts. So it wasn't isolated here, it was really spread among all of your actuaries' accounts. And I think that change in methodology really came across from the Hay Group did it one way, and then Korn Ferry, when they acquired Hay Group, took a different approach in methodology, so they just adopted Korn Ferry's methodologies for consistency throughout their firm. There is, if you turn to page 38, there's some accounting pronouncements that came into effect this year for the county. Most of those related to disclosures, wasn't anything of significance. And then there's also some accounting treatments and policies that are going to come into effect over the next couple of years or so. I don't think any of these are going to have a tremendous impact on the county. It's really going to be disclosure type of issues, not how you record transactions.
Mark, could you succinctly tell me, is this $3.6 million change to our benefit or not?
It's to your benefit. So they
So they're being a little more moderate in their assessment than they used to be.
Yeah.
Because it used to be so conservative that it really hurt us.
Yes, if you look at page 61, about a third of the way down the page, you'll see a calculation for the total pension liability. At the end of 16, it's $137 million. At the end of 15, it was $135 million. At the end of 14, it was $131 million. They went back and recalculated the liability, that $135 million for 2015. So if we would go back and look at last year's report, it would have said the liability was $139 million as opposed to $135 million. So it was how they calculated that. So it reduced that estimated liability for your pension plan by that amount. Now, it's an estimate, it's just a calculation, so it's going to change, obviously.
Sure. But the important thing is we're in a healthy position, even though you just heard the folks in front of you, that they're at 5.8 since the inception, and we assume 7.5, so.
Yeah. Well, if you look at page 61 a little bit further, you'll see the third number from the bottom of the page. In 2016, 85.69. That is the amount of assets in relation to your pension liability. So you have assets at the end of 16 of $117 million. You calculated a liability of $137 million. You have funds in there for 85% of that liability. At the end of 15, it was 83%. At the end of 2014, it was also 83%. But if you look back and you go back to 2013, you were at 69.1%. So you've made significant improvement and progress in the funding of the pension plan. The other thing to keep in mind relative to that is if you look on page 59, at the bottom of the page, you'll see a sensitivity analysis of your pension plan. So right now, you're assuming a discount rate or an interest rate of 7.5%. using that rate, your pension liability, the unfunded portion of your pension is $19 million. If you only earn 6.5% over the long term, your liability is going to increase to $32 million. If you actually earn 8.5%, your liability decreases to 8.5%. So it's extremely important that you keep in touch with your money managers,
Yes.
your financial advisors, to make sure that you're hitting your targets or doing what you can.
But again, we're at 5, since the inception of that fund, at 5.8, and you don't want to, I mean, 60% of it's in equity roughly, so that's the part that's working. So it's a kind of tough assignment to get to 7.5.
7.5.
If not impossible. Yeah.
You're right, it's not impossible, but it is tough, and ultimately there are corrections in the stock market. As I said, it's been a 9-year bull market. At some point, there will be a correction.
Yeah. All righty.
If you turn to page 39, note 3 discusses the deposits and investments. All of your cash is collateralized or it is covered by FDIC insurance. Obviously, your pension investments are not collateralized or covered by FDIC insurance. If you turn to page 51, note 9, this discusses your long-term debt. At the beginning of the year, long-term debt was $20.7 million. Net repayments were $3.2 million. So that includes both payments and new debt. And you guys had done the refinancing in 2016. The balance of outstanding debt at the end of the year was $17.5 million, of which $2.1 million is due in 2017. Also to be noted, related to the debt, on page, I believe it's 13 in the MD&A, we discuss the county's credit rating, and that was raised in 2017 from BBB+ to A.
May I just interject
Yeah,
one
go
thing
ahead.
there? The $3.273 million that was repayment was higher than the typical
Mhm.
debt service, $2.1 million, because if you recall, there was $1 million, when you refinanced the one bond issue, there was $1 million that was owed for the portion of Cedar Haven improvements that were done. So that's a little higher than typical. Yeah.
Yeah, your long-term maturities are on the top of page 52. You'll see you're going to be paying about $2.3 million, assuming your debt stays the same.
We are in the process of another Honeywell energy
For the lighting.
savings for lighting and for some of the HVAC at probation and at the prison. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more next week. Lease versus general obligation bond, and it looks like a bond's probably going to be the better route, just by a little, but rates are a little bit better.
Are you part of an energy consortium to buy your energy
Mhm.
too?
Yep.
There is one new footnote in your financial statements on page 55. That's note 14. That's a change in accounting standards and principles. And this note to the financial statements is really telling the readers that you have Keystone Opportunity Zone, you gave tax incentives, and that cost the county $323 this year. And then your TIF, about $30,000 in tax reduction. Just disclosures only, doesn't impact how you record anything on your books.
So the letters, there were no people getting tax breaks on letters last year?
You granted several, but
Yeah.
you'll find them in probably the 2017 audit.
Oh, it just seemed like there should be something there.
Yeah, you granted them, but they were all pre-construction, so now as those projects are built and come onto the books,
Okay.
that liability, or that, I don't know if it's a liability, but
Yeah.
just the abatement will increase, yeah.
But I like that that's there, that's nice.
Mhm. It's good information. Any questions? I know we went through it fast.
Well,
I want to say that we appreciate the timeliness. It was
Yeah, that's-
delivered in July, so
Pleasure.
That's I guess that probably, as far as I can remember, that's the soonest we've had it. It's usually been August or September. So.
Because
Thank you.
usually we didn't want to see it as.
I think
Was that Allison?
it was Allison. No, it was, I think it was on both parts. I think the departments were ready and had things available. There's always one or two that you got a nudge, but it wasn't.
That's awesome, thank you for that effort.
I do want to mention also, one of your recommendations has been that the children and youth have an additional accounting position,
Yep.
and Jim Holtree, the director, just requested to upgrade one of the positions to accounting, so that's perfect, in the works.
All right, thank you very much.
Any
Thank you.
motion? Ready to accept it? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.